Welcome to this explainer of Anthropic's brand new AI Fluency Index. It is absolutely packed with data on our real-world habits, and it reveals something pretty surprising. While we are incredibly good at adopting AI, our actual fluency, meaning how well we wield it, has some genuinely dangerous blind spots.
Adoption is skyrocketing at a pace nobody really predicted, even just a year ago. People are integrating AI into their daily routines everywhere you look. But the core question we need to answer today is whether we're actually developing the skills to use these tools well. Merely having access to a tool just isn't the same thing as having the skill to wield it. So as AI becomes a completely normal part of everyday life, are we actually getting fluent?
To figure that out, today we're unpacking 1. Adoption versus fluency. 2. Measuring fluency. 3. The power of iteration. 4. The artifact trap. And 5. Improving your AI skills.
Let's dive right into Section 1, Adoption versus AI Fluency, and going beyond basic usage.
You see, simply using AI isn't the same as being fluent, and it's a distinction that completely changes how we think about productivity. While previous reports have shown students and educators enthusiastically adopting Claude for daily tasks, like, say, a university student analyzing lab results, or a teacher building out lesson plans, that's just adoption. Anthropic wanted to go deeper. They wanted to understand if people are developing true fluency, which means getting measurably better, safer, and much more effective at actively collaborating with AI over time.
Moving on to Section 2, how we measure fluency, and looking at the baseline data.
To move past the guesswork, we actually have to quantify our habits, because, let's face it, fluency is really just a buzzword until you can measure it. So, researchers analyzed exactly 9,830 multi-turn conversations on Claude.ai over a single week in January 2026. It's a massive sample size of real-world interactions, and they specifically filtered for substantive exchanges, meaning they tossed out the quick greetings or single-word chats to really isolate the moments when users were trying to get real work done. By tracking 11 directly observable behaviors from their framework, things like clarifying goals or actively checking facts, they created a reliable baseline index of how we collaborate with AI today. Now, there are technically 24 behaviors in total, but since things like being honest with your boss about using AI obviously happen off-screen, the researchers strictly focused on the 11 behaviors they could see directly in the chat interface. This gives us a really concrete, measurable foundation for tracking exactly how our skills evolve.
That brings us to Section 3, the power of iteration and building the conversation.
This right here is where we see the absolute magic of iteration. It is exactly what separates the novices from the power users. The data shows that the most common expression of true fluency is augmentative. It's treating the AI as a collaborator rather than just tossing it a task and walking away. In fact, over 85% of the conversations sampled exhibited iteration and refinement. This means people are building on previous exchanges to refine the work, instead of just accepting the very first response the AI spits out. The users who do this are effectively using it as a true thought partner.
And when users stay in the conversation and iterate, their fluency absolutely skyrockets. Get this, users are nearly 6 times more likely to question the AI's reasoning and 4 times more likely to spot missing context. When you iterate, you naturally clarify your goals far more often. Iteration essentially acts like a key that unlocks your critical thinking, transforming a very basic, simple prompt into a high-level creative session.
Now let's look at Section 4, the artifact trap and the illusion of perfection.
There is a fascinating and honestly slightly dangerous plot twist in the data. When the AI builds us something complex, like a coded app or a flawlessly formatted document, we tend to just fall asleep at the wheel. Users become highly directive at the start, but their evaluative behaviors, their critical thinking, dangerously drops off. The study found that in the conversations involving these polished artifacts, users were heavily focused on description and delegation. They were doing a fantastic job directing the AI right at the outset, but they virtually stopped evaluating the actual output.
We develop a massive blind spot here. When faced with a highly polished output, users are over 5 percentage points less likely to identify missing context, and overall fact-checking just drops across the board. The data clearly shows how much more directive users get when creating these artifacts, but questioning the AI's reasoning completely plummets. It's a staggering gap, especially when you consider that Anthropic's own data shows complex tasks are exactly where these AI models tend to struggle the most.
The researchers suspect this artifact effect happens purely because the output looks so perfect, We get intellectually lazy right when the task is at its most complex. When a piece of code runs or a document has impeccable formatting, it possesses this illusion of perfection. If the work looks finished, we treat it as finished. Now, to be completely fair, users might be evaluating these artifacts off-platform, testing the code in their own editor. But the visible drop in critical questioning inside the chat is still a major behavioral pattern that we have to be aware of.
Finally, let's wrap up with Section 5, improving your AI skills with actionable steps.
So, how do we actually avoid this trap and shift from basic adoption to high-level fluency? The report doesn't just leave us hanging with the data. It gives us a really practical 3-step playbook for your very next prompt. First, stay in the chat. Treat that initial response as a rough draft and push back on parts that don't quite feel right. Second, actively question those suspiciously perfect polished artifacts. When it looks flawless, force yourself to pause and ask, does this reasoning actually hold up? And third, set your terms of collaboration right up front.
Right now, in only 30% of conversations do users actually tell Claude how they want to interact. The vast majority of people are just barking commands and taking whatever they get. If you want to jump immediately into the top tier of AI users, just add a line to your prompt like, walk me through your reasoning before giving me the answer, or push back if my assumptions are wrong. Just setting those basic expectations completely changes the entire dynamic of the output.
As these AI models become more and more capable of pumping out perfectly polished artifacts, your ability to critically evaluate and iterate is going to be your absolute greatest asset. So, how are you going to approach your next prompt? Will you fall right into the artifact trap, assuming that a beautifully formatted response is a flawless one? Or will you step up, treat the AI like a true thought partner, set the terms of engagement, and demand a real, iterative collaboration? Ultimately, that choice defines your fluency. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and I really challenge you to test these 3 steps out in your very next AI conversation.